Hello, I'm Michelle Glass, Director of Education, and welcome to Foreclosure Alternatives, a live discussion. I'm very excited tonight because we have a special guest with us, Kim Whitehead. Kim Whitehead was featured in the Black Enterprise magazine article that was featured in November of this year, and she talks to us about how CredAbility was able to help her save her home from foreclosure. Kim, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
And thank you for having me.
Well, Kim, first off, I think many people want to know, how did you find out about CredAbility and why did you call us in the first place?
One day I was surfing the internet for resources and I saw a news article where they were talking about Consumer Credit Counseling Services of Greater Atlanta had changed its name to CredAbility. I was familiar with Consumer Credit Services because I used them in college and it helped me get through some credit card debt. So that's when I decided to call.
So you had experience with the organization in the past,
Yes.
And when you saw that name change article, it kind of prompted you to call.
Make that call.
Now, were you calling in regards to just your mortgage, or was it a combination of things?
Combination of things.
Okay.
My mortgage, my credit card debt, and my student loan debt.
Okay. Well, Kim was very kind enough to share her story with us on a video. So let's go to that video now.
Hi, my name is Kim. I moved from the countryside of Virginia to Atlanta in 2004 to complete medical school. In 2005, I set about looking for a permanent place to live in my new city. In the summer of 2005, I bought a condo, 14 floors over Midtown Atlanta. It was a great spot for someone working her way through school, at the center of an urban area packed with things to do and places to go. Everything was great for a while. I was busy with school and working various jobs that could fit into my studies. At the beginning of 2010, I was still current on my mortgage, but I began to realize it would be a struggle to keep up with my payments much longer. I contacted my lender to ask for a loan modification, but I didn't get anywhere. I kept trying through the spring, but was rejected 2 more times. In 2010, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Because of the side effects of the treatment, I wasn't able to work many hours. Because I only worked part-time with no benefits, I didn't get paid when I didn't work. I began to fall behind on all of my bills. At that point, I decided to do some research and found out that CredAbility not only did debt counseling, but also housing counseling. I decided to call CredAbility to get help. My counselor took time to understand my situation and helped me prioritize my expenses. He coached me to write a letter to my creditors explaining my medical hardship, and he helped me communicate with my mortgage lender in a way designed to get the best results. I wish I could say that at that point, it was presto, everything back to normal. What really happened was my mortgage lender responded to my application with a note that it was under review. I considered that a step forward compared to the quick rejections I got earlier in the year. At one point, I was calling the loan processor handling my mortgage every day. Almost a year after I started with CredAbility, I got the news I'd hoped for. The day before my birthday in June 2011, I learned I was approved for a loan modification that lowered my monthly payment by almost $300. I couldn't wait to go down to my counselor's office and thank him in person for all he had done and for his encouragement that helped me stick with it when it felt like I was bumping into a brick wall. Why am I doing this video? Because I hope if you know someone who's worried about holding on to their home, you'll recommend that they pick up the phone and call CredAbility. It's a call that made a world of difference for me.
What a very inspiring story that was, Kim. Now, the video showed the successful collaboration between you, your lender, and CredAbility, and they were successful in getting you a loan modification. Well, a loan modification is where the terms of your loan have changed in some way, meaning maybe the interest rate has been lowered or your payments are lowered. So, Kim, tell us, how did the CredAbility counselor, what role did they play in this for you?
He was compassionate. He told me he could help me. We went over my expenses. He helped me make a budget. We submitted that budget as part of my loan modification application packet, and he sent that packet directly to the lender for me.
So the counselor submitted your package for you?
Yes.
You didn't have to do it yourself?
Exactly.
Now that's pretty incredible. Did the counselor explain any other alternatives to foreclosure to you?
No, but I told him my lender had approached me about doing a short sale.
Okay, so the lender wanted you to do a short sale, but you got a loan modification. Was
Right.
that because you desired to stay in your home and you talked to your counselor about that?
Yes, I love my home. I love the location. I love the people there. So I wanted to stay in my home.
Well, that's really good. So the counselor listened to the things that you wanted,
Right.
which was to stay in the home, and you had the capacity to stay in the home. So that's where they went with you.
Exactly.
Okay, so for those people who are probably interested in a loan modification, like in Kim's case, there are some things that you want to talk to your counselor about. Now remember, you don't get to pick and choose which option you have available. Your lender will look at that for you. But there are other alternatives to foreclosure, so I'll quickly go over some of those. Now, there's something called a short sale, and a short sale is where the lender agrees to take a lesser amount than what the property is actually worth. Short sales could be in the case of somebody who's underwater on their mortgage, meaning you owe more on the house than what its actually appraised value is. There's also something called a forbearance. Now, a forbearance is where for a period of time you don't have to pay. So many lenders will offer that if, let's say perhaps you're out of work for a temporary period of time, 3 months, 6 months. During that time, you do not have to make your mortgage payments. So that's called a forbearance. There's also something called a repayment plan. Now, a repayment plan is when you make your regular monthly mortgage payments, and then the amounts that you owe on the back end, maybe you were behind several months, well, those are split apart, and they add a little bit of that to your regular monthly mortgage payments. And that's called a repayment plan. And then finally, there's something called a deed in lieu. And a deed in lieu is where you don't want to stay in your home. You know that you don't have the capacity to make those future mortgage payments, but you want to have a controlled process about how the property gets turned back over to the lender. So a deed in lieu may be something that you're interested in pursuing. Again, you probably want to reach out to a qualified housing counseling agency. Talk with the counselor about your particular situation and let them work with you to find a solution that will work in your best interest for you and your family, just like Kim did. Now, it's important to remember that, again, if you know that you are going to be behind or you may fall behind, maybe you're not even behind on your mortgage, you have to reach out for help. You have to call your lender or you have to engage an agency that can work on your behalf. That's very key. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Definitely. Okay, so Kim, many people probably feel that they want a loan modification just like you got. What advice can you give to those folks who are listening to us today?
Don't do it alone.
Okay.
Go through a qualified housing counselor.
Mm-hmm.
I was denied several times on my own. And just the context, I mean, they would say my application was under review, incomplete, or just plain out deny me.
Mm-hmm.
But after going with the housing counselor, I didn't have that issue anymore. Be persistent. If you have to, call the lender every day. Make sure you have one point of contact
Mm-hmm.
rather than speaking to several people.
Mm-hmm.
Document each call. Answer the phone when they call, because you never know what kind of number they're going to call you from. One time I missed a call and I had to start my whole process all over again.
The whole paperwork process?
A whole paperwork process.
Wow.
And read your mail. Because
Okay.
one day I read my mail and didn't realize the process had been sped up.
That's some very good advice. So did your counselor talk to you about maybe the hardship? Because I know in your situation you were dealing with a medical
Mhm,
issue.
mhm.
Did you do anything about talking to your lender about your medical issues or anything like that? Or
Mhm.
should you leave that totally separate?
Now, my counselor encouraged me to contact all my creditors and explain my medical situation and see if I could settle with my companies, and most of them did.
So you did that
Mhm.
via hardship letter?
Via hardship letter.
Oh.
A phone call.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. And they were willing to talk with you
Yes.
when you talked about that
Mhm.
situation? Okay. So the things that you mentioned about your counselor helping you with, did they do all of that for you, or were you required to, get the paperwork together and document everything and try to reach that person, that one point of contact? Did you do that, or did the counselor help
Both
you?
of us
Or
did it. It was a joint effort.
So it was a team
Mhm,
effort.
mhm.
That's excellent news. That's excellent to know, because a lot of people out there who are listening to us are trying to do this by themselves.
Mhm.
And you mentioned that when you submitted your paperwork that sometimes it would get lost or you didn't get a phone call, you had to start over. We've gotten several emails from people that say that the process is a little bit frustrating for them and that, their lender says they lost their paperwork. And that process happened to you. How many times did you actually start over doing this by yourself before you met your housing counselor?
3.
3 times?
3 times.
And you still weren't successful by yourself?
I still wasn't successful.
Wow. So Kim brings up a very great point that even though she went through this process, she tried over and over to get the process done herself, she still needed to reach out for help. And that's what we're trying to talk to you about tonight is you don't have to do this alone by yourself. Reach out for help, contact your lender. If you don't feel comfortable talking to your lender, you can reach out to a nonprofit housing counseling agency like CredAbility if you'd like, and let someone help you. That's what we're here for. We want to see you be successful and stay in your home if that's what you desire. Now, if there are people out there that have questions, you can email us at liveeventq@credability.org. Again, that email address is liveeventq@credability.org. So please, if you have those questions, go ahead and type those up and send those in, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can on our live event. Now, we do have some questions that were sent in ahead of time on our Facebook account and some that were emailed to us. So I'm going to see if I can get to a few of those before we go any further. Now, we got a question here from Jim. And Jim asks, what happens if I want a loan modification on my first mortgage, but I have a second mortgage too? This is a really good question. We have a lot of people that call into our agency that don't just have their primary loan, they have a second loan as well. So there's a couple of things that can happen here, Jim. If you have your primary loan and your second loan and it's with the same company, then you may be able to work with your lender where they can consolidate those loans and give you a modification to the terms of that loan, either a lower interest rate, lower payment, whatever it may be. But if they're with the same company, that is something that can be an option for you. Now, if in your question here, if your second mortgage is with a different company, meaning a different lender, then the loan modification would come with the primary mortgage. The second mortgage, you would need to work with that other lender to find out if they have some type of solution. But if they don't have a solution, what you can do is with your primary loan, once you get that lower payment, use those additional dollars to go towards that second loan to pay it off as quickly as you can. That was a great question, Jim. Thank you for that. We also had a question that came in from Xavier. And Xavier says, I owe more on my house than it's worth. I don't want a foreclosure on my record, but I feel like I'm wasting money paying more than it's worth. What do I do? We also get a lot of questions like this, Xavier, and it's a really good question. When you say you don't want a foreclosure on your record, what he's talking about is his credit report. He doesn't want to have a foreclosure on his credit report. So my advice to you, Xavier, is this. If you have the capacity to stay in your home and you want to stay in your home, then continue to make those mortgage payments. But you also probably want to reach out to your lender to find out if there's some type of option that's available for you. Even if you aren't behind on your mortgage, there may be other programs that can help you in looking at that mortgage to see how much the property is worth. Maybe the lender can offer some type of modification for you as well. So again, you want to reach out for help. If you're not comfortable talking to your lender, again, you can reach out to a nonprofit full-service credit counseling agency for that. Let's see, we have another question. I'm going to try to see if I can get through as many questions as I can. But again, if you're online right now looking at our event, please email your questions to liveeventq@credability.org. Now this question is from Stefan. Stefan says that my employer cut overtime wages. I'm not behind on my mortgage yet, but it is coming. Do you think my mortgage company will work with me if I'm not behind? Stephen, again, many people are in your same situation where they aren't behind yet, but they think they may fall behind, or their wages have been cut, or they're on a different job where they're not making as much as they were on their previous job. So that, again, you need to find out if you're in the first signs of trouble. Please reach out for help. You have to reach out for help. If you wait, some of those options may not be available for you. So it's important, critical. please reach out for help. Call your lender directly. And again, if you don't feel comfortable or if you're not sure who to call, just call a nonprofit credit counseling agency and let someone help you through this process. You do not have to do it alone.
And don't believe people who tell you need to be 2 months behind in order to get a modification. That's not true at all.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So avoid people that are telling you these general rules of fall behind or something like that.
Right.
Call your lender directly. Okay, now we do have another video that talks about another young lady by the name of Jennifer who also fell behind on her mortgage and was facing foreclosure. So we're going to go to her short video and let her tell her story.
Jennifer Simmons bought this home near downtown Atlanta with one of her best friends back in 2004. In the midst of a bad economy, she lost her job and her co-owner was transferred out of town.
He turned over his ownership in the home to me, and while I had just started a new job, my savings had been depleted and I didn't have enough income to make the full mortgage payment. It was right before Christmas, and that's when I called CredAbility for help.
Alan Stacy, a housing counselor at CredAbility, reassured Jennifer that she was among thousands in similar circumstances. After spending about an hour on the telephone going over her income and expenses, Alan felt that Jennifer was a good candidate for a loan modification.
Jennifer called and she was obviously concerned, and I wanted to make sure that I could give her some hope. The good news is that she made the decision to call us before her problem became too severe. She was not yet late on her mortgage, but she was about to be.
Alan made a conference call with Jennifer to her mortgage company and helped to get the application for a loan modification started.
Alan helped me understand which documents, such as W-2s and tax returns, that I needed to send. 2 days after the conference call, he called me again. He emphasized that I needed to make certain Wells Fargo had all of my documents if I was going to have a chance at saving my home.
Approximately 70% of the people we counsel report that they've recently lost their job, or at least some part of their household income. Of course, by the time they call us for help, many are scared of what might happen. A lot of people have already fallen behind on their mortgage payments and have started dipping into their savings. Even worse, some people have received bad advice, telling them to stop paying their mortgage completely. Others have fallen prey to loan modification scams and paid thousands of dollars to organizations promising results that are rarely delivered and further damaging their financial situation. A nonprofit housing counselor can analyze a homeowner's budget, explore their options, and hopefully find a solution. We have the knowledge and the experience, and our services are absolutely free. In the past 3 years, we have counseled more than 250,000 homeowners from around the country seeking to avoid foreclosure.
Jennifer's mortgage company put her on a 3-month trial loan modification. This is a short-term program that allows people to make a lower payment while at the same time qualifying for a permanent loan modification.
And that's just the break that Jennifer needed. By getting into the trial loan modification, she had 1 month with no mortgage payment at all, which really provided some relief and helped her establish some savings. Then she went into a lowered mortgage payment of $750 a month, down from $1,100. Now she could afford this payment, and that was what it took for her to find success.
Once Jennifer received her trial modification, Alan recommended she put away as much of the money she was saving from the lower payments. He also recommended cuts in her monthly budget.
He also told me to call the mortgage company every week to check on the status of my application. He kept telling me, "Don't let this sit." He made me understand that if I was going to find a solution, it was my responsibility to stay on top of it.
Well, the mortgage companies are really swamped, and so a homeowner can't be afraid to take charge, and if that means calling every single week to get an answer to their questions and a satisfactory resolution, then that's what they should do.
Job losses have made it difficult for people to avoid foreclosure, but people who receive counseling have a much better chance of keeping their home. Our research shows that 80% of homeowners who receive counseling from CredAbility are still living in their homes 1 year after their counseling session.
And Jennifer? She now has a full-time job and has been approved for a permanent loan modification. She made the call, took the advice, and is for herself and for CredAbility a success story.
That was a great story, and it shows the combination of a persistent homeowner working with a counselor to get the best solution for their situation. Now, Kim, in your situation, did you ever feel frustrated and wanted to give up?
I never planned to give up because I'm a fighter by nature. My parents taught me well. But I was frustrated because at that time, as the video said, I was going through my second bout of cancer. So I was going through the physical side effects of having a mastectomy, chemotherapy, and radiation. So I was not concerned only about saving my life, also my home. So it was a lot that I was going through at that time.
That can be very overwhelming, and I'm glad that the counselor was able to work with you through everything that you were going through. You are a fighter. Now, this brings up another question that we got through our email. It's from Jane, and Jane says, I was in a trial modification when I applied to make it permanent. The servicer said paperwork was missing. Is it really worth the effort to start the process over? What do you think about that, Kim?
Definitely be persistent. If you have to start it over 15 times, keep doing it.
Yeah. So I would say to you, Jane, follow the advice that Kim did. Kim, through all the things that she was going through, she never gave up. She wanted to keep her home. She had the capacity to stay in that home, and she fought for it. And working with her counselor, they were able to come to that solution. And we want to see the same results for those of you who are out there watching today. We want to help you through this process. You don't have to do this alone by yourself. Reach out for help. Let us help you. Now, these are really great questions that we're getting through the email. I'm so glad that you guys are writing. And don't forget that if you want to tweet with us, you can look on the Facebook page at the top. There's a link to Twitter, and you can even post a comment on Twitter if you'd like to do that. So post your comments and your questions, and we'll try to make sure we get to those. And we've got a few more questions down here. But just thinking about all of this, it brings me back to some of the questions that my educators get when they go out in the field and teach classes to people who are in trouble. And one of the most common questions that they get is about, I don't have enough money to pay for all of my expenses, and they don't know where to go with that. Now, did your counselor talk to you about what you should pay first when he was going through your budget?
He helped me prioritize my expenses.
Okay.
And then I wrote the hardship letters, as I said before, and we figured out which we tackled the more expensive, the higher balances first.
Okay, on your credit cards. That's great. And it's important that the counselor give you that type of advice, especially with your budget. You do have to prioritize your expenses, like Kim just stated. For example, you want to pay those necessity items first and put the wants on the bottom of the list. So let's just talk, for example, the first necessity, you have to have a place to stay. So your mortgage or your rent, that's going to be priority number one. Now you have to keep that house cool, heated, and water flowing, so your utilities will be number two. You need to eat, right? So that's a priority, but it doesn't mean going out to eat, right, Kim?
Right. Pack your lunch.
Pack your lunch, exactly, and go grocery shopping. Get those coupons, look at the circulars. You need to make sure that you are doing the right thing with every single dollar. So grocery shopping is priority number three. And then you have to find a way back and forth to work, right? Because you have to have the income coming in. So transportation would be a priority for you. Now, if you have a car payment that's $600 and you have reduced your income from, let's say, $60,000 down to $30,000, then that $600 car payment is going to hurt every month. So you may want to look at each of these things and find out, maybe I can't really afford this car payment. Maybe I need to sell the car and get a cheaper car. Maybe even get a car that I can pay cash for so that I don't have a car payment every month. But looking at each of your expense items in your budget to find out what are those necessity items, and then what are the things that you can get rid of. Maybe you can do without your magazine subscriptions or your newspaper subscriptions. Whatever it is, you have to look at your budget, and if you're not comfortable or you're not sure how to do it, that's where the housing counselor comes in. They will look at your total financial picture, not just the mortgage. They're going to look at everything to make sure that they're making the right financial decisions for you. So it looks like we've talked about the budget. We've talked about some of the expense items to cut back. Were there any expense items that you had difficulty letting go of when your counselor went through your budget, or were you comfortable with everything?
I was comfortable with everything, but I had a lot of private student loans, and they really don't work with you as much as the companies that have your federal student loans.
So you had the old college student loans, and that was a problem. So are you successful now with getting a plan to pay those down as well?
Yes.
Well, that's really good, because that shows that the counselor doesn't just look at credit cards. They look at everything. And that's important for the viewers at home to know, that we won't just segregate and look at certain things. We're going to look at that entire financial picture and make sure that we come up with a solution that'll work for you. Now, I think we have time for some more emails that came in. So Jonathan is saying that I'm several months behind and I haven't heard from my lender. If I call a housing counselor, will that cause my lender to begin foreclosing on me? Well, Jonathan, that's a very good question, and I know that it can be scary out there waiting for a response and not really knowing what's going on, but I want to reassure you that CredAbility would never contact your lender without your authorization. So the important thing here is, if you're waiting and you're not sure what's going on and you're not hearing any response, you have to reach out for help. So if you want to call CredAbility, you can call us at 1-800-251-2227 and let one of our housing counselors help you through this process. Right now, we have representatives that are standing by. We're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in English and Spanish. So please, if you need some assistance, pick up the phone and reach out for help. Looks like we had a couple more emails, and I don't know if we're going to have time to get through all of those. So I'm going to save some of these emails, and we'll have to talk about these on our next live event. But before we go, I just want to recap some of the things that we talked about, because I know that a lot of you have questions about all the different alternatives to foreclosure. So I want to make sure I go back and address some of those things we talked about earlier. Now, I want to talk about 6 different options that are available as an alternative. Reinstatement. Reinstatement is where a lender agrees to accept all those back payments in a lump sum as you continue to make your regular monthly mortgage payments. Repayment plan, that's where you make your regular monthly payments and then you pay a portion of whatever those past due monthly amounts were until everything gets caught back up. Then there's loan modification. And with a loan modification, this is similar what Kim received. This is where the terms of your loan have changed in some way, meaning the interest rate has changed, your payment's been lowered, the number of years, something about that loan has changed. That's a loan modification. Then there's sale of the house. If you don't have the capacity to stay in your home, selling the home may be an option for you. And then if you are underwater, meaning you owe more on your home than what it's actually worth, you may want to look into a short sale. That's where the lender agrees to take less than what is actually owed to them. And finally, there is deed in lieu. And deed in lieu, as we talked about earlier, that's a more controlled way to transfer the mortgage over to the lender from yourself so that you don't go through the foreclosure process. So you have some control in how that occurs. Again, it's unfortunate that sometimes foreclosure can't be avoided, but what we want everybody out there to know is that there is help available. Just reach out for help. And again, CredAbility is here. If you want to reach out to us, again, our phone number is 1-800-251-2227, or you can visit us online at CredAbility.org. Now that unfortunately brings us to the end of our event, and I hate to go, but we've had a fantastic discussion, and I really want to thank our special guest, Kim Whitehead, so much for sharing her story and being with us tonight. Kim, thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
And thank you to all of those at home. We hope that you enjoyed our Foreclosure Alternatives live discussion, and we look forward to seeing you at a future event. Thank you, and good night.